Hello. Right, I'm going to invite Charlie. Ah,
Hello,
hello.
nice to see you.
It's really nice to see you. So I haven't seen Charlie for um since we both had bubbas, I think.
Yes, yeah, no, that's at least a year. Yeah.
I
Um,
yeah, yeah.
is Toby a year now?
He's almost a year. So he's a year on the 1st of March.
But I thought it was around now. Yeah,
And
amazing.
Willow's like 13 months, is she?
No, well, it'll be 13 months on the 10th. Yeah. So I can't believe it. To be honest, I cannot believe she's a year old.
I know.
But I'm a father of a 1-year-old. I just find that completely bizarre.
I've loved watching her grow though, and I will be down the moment we're free. I'll be
Good.
coming, guys.
I hope so. 'Cause
Um,
you've got family near the coast. And is it your sister or your?
it's my sister-in-law. So
Oh,
my hobby's sister is based down in Westwit as well. So
yeah.
lovely part of the world. But thank you
Brilliant.
so much for taking the time today to join as my guest of the Week of Happiness.
Absolute pleasure.
So I realised that quite a lot of my themes, even though it's called Lift the Spirits, that the themes have been quite heavy, which hasn't been intentional, but I've also kind of had to go places to hopefully then impart some insight and tools that people hopefully would have taken away to create their own wobble toolkit. But today we're talking about you and positive psychology, reframing, and your own journey really with mental. I said in my post, but Charlie is a life coach and culture consultant, also an entrepreneur. So he founded Tapped Birch Water, which is yummy.
Good plug.
No, but genuinely is really tasty. And lots of my Agora events were lucky enough to have Tapped away.
Good work.
Entrepreneur who's at Innocent Drinks. He's cycled all the way. Was it from Malaysia? Was it
Malaysia, yeah, from Kuala
yeah,
Lumpur back to London.
just casual cycle back
Yeah,
home. I love that. 10,000
flying's overrated.
rated.
So yeah,
So interesting journey you've had in that alone, and then beyond that, recently you've written a book and been incredibly brave in doing so. And I know that it's really been helping people, certainly, and it's not easy to do. People always say commend people who talk openly, but actually when it comes to doing it yourself and actually putting your own experience and your vulnerability right out there, it's not easy to do. You do, and particularly when it comes to guys, we all know it's not so easy when it comes to guys' mental health, and the suicide rate of guys is just terrifying. So that's a little history about. But coming back to positive psychology, what led you to study it those 2-3 years ago, and how does it differ from traditional psychology?
so I guess why I studied it was kind of a culmination of a 10-year, sounds very cheesy, but like a personal development journey, I guess, of like 10 years of kind of trying to figure out my own mental health and how to manage it, which is obviously why I ended up writing the book as well. And yeah, so it was really the kind of the culmination of it, having tried lots of different things, from meditation retreats to CBT to even taking antidepressants at one time, all sorts of bits and pieces. And I became very, very interested in psychology, in self-help, and I guess I wanted to find something that was a bit more scientific, a bit more evidence-based than the kind of general self-help literature out there. And then I met someone or in fact, Charlotte Wiseman, who who I met her at a Sweaty Betty event, actually, of all things, when I was I was running a stand of tapped birch water, trying to kind of peddle our goods to all the Sweaty Betty customers at their annual show. And I bumped into Charlotte, got chatting, and she mentioned a few other things, and one of them was was this master's she was in the process of doing, and I thought, wow, that sounds really interesting. It's kind of this self-help world, but like I said, evidence-based. And looked into it, and then kind of quite quickly signed up to it and started doing it. And then I realized that that's what I wanted to get into, and so I moved away from TAPT. Luckily, my business partner was happy to take it on, as he's still running it now. And I've kind of gone into the world of psychology and coaching. So it was positive psychology with coaching psychology, and hence why I'm now a life coach as well. And to answer your second question, how does it differ? So it basically, in a nutshell, the easiest way to describe how it differs is that psychology traditionally is focused on what's wrong with people. Positive psychology focuses on what is right with people and tries to enhance it. So psychology traditionally focuses on the kind of 20-30% of people in society who have mental health challenges, and tries to fix them, depression, anxiety, and all the others. Whereas positive psychology is looking at everyone having mental health, as opposed to just that minority that have mental health issues. So if you think about mental health being on a continuum of everything from, full-on hardcore depression to absolutely flourishing at the other end of the spectrum, everyone is on that continuum, if you like, moving up and down it all the time. And positive psychology focuses on everyone, as opposed to just the people who are suffering from mental health disorders.
That's really interesting, and that's an interesting way to look at it, because when we do think mental health, it's really hard to still not think of a negative image when one talks about mental health. It's really hard. It's something that's so kind of stuck in our heads. Whether that will ever change it, hopefully it will do, but it's quite hard when you've kind of grown up with a word to then for your brain to kind of like switch it over. But that's why positive psychology, I've always been interested. I remember talking to you about it 2 years ago, so it's like end of 2018, and I considered it actually, and it just wasn't quite the right thing for me.
Yeah,
I've always been interested in it, and I'm really, really pleased to hear like actually what the difference is, and that it just, so that reframing in a way kind of starts right from the word go, which is interesting.
It's interesting. I was going to say also, it's I don't actually like the name of it. I think I really like the principle of what it's trying to achieve, i.e. everyone can go be supported on this continuum of mental health to be more towards the flourishing side and away from the kind of languishing or depressed side. Regardless of where you are at this time, you can take action, you can use evidence-based techniques to actually move up that continuum. But the name of it, positive psychology, slightly jars with me, because not all life is positive, right? There are many negatives to life, and you're not always going to be positive. So I like the principle of it as opposed to the name.
Yes, I can see that. And did it influence your writing of Man Down? Was that something that you'd had in mind for a while, or were you suddenly sat one day and thought,
no.
do it?
It was a very serendipitous thing, actually. I was actually approached by a publisher to write it because of the masters and because of my personal experience. It was completely random, not something I ever thought about doing at all. I'm not a writer naturally, but they asked me to do this, and I thought, wow, that's a great opportunity. Like, why not? So I mean, I think, the fact that I'd done the masters and the fact that I had this personal experience, and I thought, hang on a second, I can actually help other people here. This is like, why would I not? And it does seem to be helping other people, and it's being nicely reviewed, and I've had really good feedback from people. And I just had an email a couple of days ago from a mother who's given it to her 20-year-old son who's been struggling with depression for some time, and it's the first book that he's read for, I think, for a long time, she said, basically, because it's nice and short. It's very kind of, you can dip in and out of it and just take what you can from it at that time. I certainly, when I've been suffering from a lot of anxiety, the thought of being able to read a book, I remember I bought a book on anxiety that's, it's a nice normal sized book, whatever, 80,000 words. There's no way. I got through halfway through the first chapter and then just couldn't actually focus on it. So this is, I think it's about 10,000 words. So it's very, very accessible. That was the kind of main premise of the book.
You can find actually books. I have a book called Solving Anxiety, something like that, and it literally sends you a spiral just looking at the title. I've actually taken it and like hit it.
Yeah, yeah. So if it's going to trigger you, that's probably not great, is it? It's not great for a mental health resource that's actually, yeah, triggering more mental health challenges. No.
So something a bit softer, you know. I'm not saying man down as a title. It's like softer. You know what I mean? You don't have to be so kind of up front with it. But did you, in terms of your own experience, I know you've been on quite a journey, and I know journey. Gosh, it's so cliched, isn't it? But, you know, story, journey, life. You've
Mm.
had a life, and in life there are highs and lows and
Mm-hmm.
challenges. You've written recently about your experiences at school.
Mm.
Did you find that more challenging or a different challenging to the book? Because you would have had to kind of impart your own experience into both, but I imagine that the bullying was really brought up stuff,
Mm.
quite raw.
Yeah.
That quite a challenge for you?
Definitely. The bullying thing was, so yeah, to give people context, I was badly bullied at a boarding school for 2 years, ended up leaving that school, but I didn't tell anyone for those 2 years, kind of physically, verbally abused and completely excluded. And I ended up meeting up with the guy who bullied me 20 years after the event, as a kind of way of trying to deal with it. I had a lot of kind of anger and resentment against him. And yeah, so it was definitely harder to write articles about that and have interviews and things about that, because it was fundamentally, that's the main driver of the mental health challenges I've had. Because I was, at a very formative age, I was, I effectively had trauma. I mean, some people call it PTSD. So it's writing about that it's like the triggering event. It's the cause that, of course, has caused was harder for me to do, without a doubt, than writing the book, which was more of a kind of general guide for people interweaving my story. I did mention being bullied in that, but I didn't go into a lot of detail on it. It was more about the overall experience and just using a bit of my personal story, my personal journey to just give context to people, normalize what they're going through, and then provide kind of hints and tips and tools for them to actually manage their own mental health.
And is it something that you did yourself? It's quite easy sometimes to forget how to help yourself, if you mean, and going back into actually what you've written must be quite insightful in a way when you're in that place, when you're not necessarily completely in the positive space or in kind of
Yeah,
levels
of
where
course, yeah. Of course. I mean, just like everyone else, I have ups and downs. God, yeah. I mean, okay, yes, I've written a book about mental health, and I've done a master's in positive psychology. But that doesn't mean I'm positive all the time. Absolutely not. I mean, this morning is a great example. I was feeling quite anxious this morning. I still suffer from anxiety, and I kind of learned how to manage it. And one of the things I did is, I know that getting outdoors makes a huge difference to me. Playing with my daughter makes a massive difference to me. I can't explain how much of an anxiety reducing thing that's been, or she's been. So I took her out to our local playground and had a kind of hour putting on swings and all that kind of stuff, and I felt completely different after that. It's from waking up feeling quite anxious, an hour outside with her, of course. But I guess my point is that we all go through ups and downs, as you said. Life is full of them, even on a daily basis. And this is something I try and reiterate to people, is that there is no fix to mental health. You're not going to, I spent years hoping that something was just going to flick in my mind and fix me, and I was suddenly going to be happy all the time. But that's just not how life works. There are plenty of ups and downs, and it's just a process of management as opposed to a fix.
and acceptance is quite accepting life is like that, because sometimes we want to look at it through rose tinted glasses and we want it to be a certain way, but actually there's a lot of change in life. We have the seasons, uncertainty, which we've all been confronted in the last year, and that isn't always easy. If we can have a level of acceptance about the flow and the ups and downs, knowing that you always do come out the other side, like the ups and downs, the downs do pass. Sitting with them can be really challenging. I know from my yoga teaching and my yoga studying that actually being able to be in your body and notice and be okay, not being okay, and not trying to fight those
Yeah.
feelings, those emotions, and know. There's a great image that my therapist sent me. I'll post it. So it's so great. But of where your mind can go when you're feeling anxious or when you're feeling worried or when, you know, and how to help it kind of go the other way. You'll need the image here, but
yeah, that's it.
I created a wobble toolkit when I was healing from overcooking it a couple of years ago. About a few weeks ago, it was a variety of things. Mentors was really important to me. People who believe in you. Go to course, nature, which I know we share. Things, simple things like friendship and taking, or just like you say with playing with Willow, which is even a level to that, because friendship is one thing. Being with a small child like it's so grounding. They're so, and it's so simple. Everyone has, I think it's so important for everyone to have their own wobble toolkit to dive and dip into when do you have something similar? What would go into the toolkit?
Well, like I mentioned, the getting outside for sure, and that's a huge one for me. Just getting into nature, and yeah, connecting with my daughter for sure, and with Pip as well, my partner. You know, taking time to talk things through. I think definitely. I mean, I'm a big fan of vulnerability, and opening up to people has been a huge part of my kind of personal journey towards managing my emotions. Being honest about what I'm actually going through. It's amazing how many men particularly don't even tell their partners actually the kind of thoughts or the challenges they're having. So I think in terms of a toolkit, that's probably, yeah, it's getting outdoors, it's connecting with my family, and it's being honest, taking time to actually communicate, you know, to use the overused term, authentically. Yeah.
And therapy wise, I mean, there's so many different, and therapy itself, nature is therapy. And with Willow, that, you know, all of these are kind of therapies, but have you tried any more traditional therapy, any being more beneficial than others for you?
Traditional therapy like CBT or
Yeah,
that kind of stuff.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
CBT was helpful for me. I mean, again, I was hoping that it was going to be like a fix. I did CBT twice actually, and I was hoping that it was going to be something that I would learn this tool and it would teach me how to manage negative thinking patterns and so on. And it didn't fix me, but it did teach me a toolkit. It taught me simple concepts like black and white thinking. You know, I'm very prone to catastrophizing, thinking in all or nothing kind of thinking, seeing things in a very binary way when actually there are many shades of gray in between the black and white, if that makes sense. So just simple little tricks like that have helped me to gain perspective, as you talked about, you know, when you're in that kind of panicked or anxious state, to be able to see actually, yeah, this is accepting how I feel right now and seeing the long term. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. So yeah, those kind of things have been able to give me perspective. So CBT, what else? I mean, I have to say meditation never really worked for me. But I think, yeah, CBT and to be honest, vulnerability, just literally just opening up to people has been the biggest driver of me kind of feeling better and learning how to manage better. But traditional therapy, the only one is really that.
So I'm reading a book which I mentioned ago. I posted it as one of the books called The Healing Vagus Nerve.
Okay, yeah.
And it talks a bit about polyvagal theory and the recent discovery and understanding that there are two paths to the vagus nerve as opposed to just one. The social engagement one, the ventral vagus, which is what keeps us socially engaged and in our rest and digest, and basically in our good space. And an older vagus nerve called the dorsal vagus is when people dissociate and depressive and freeze. It's kind of similar to fight and flight freeze function, which is, I think, what historically scientists, people understood the spinal sympathetic chain, which is your fight and flight, your vagus nerve being your rest and digest. But actually, there's more to the vagus nerve meets the eye. He's a body cranial sacral therapist, works a lot with Rolfing technique, but he writes a lot around, well, it's all evidence-based, of looking at the function of the vagus nerve for affecting mood.
Mm-hmm.
And he's found that, and he gives all different examples from all different of people coming who've tried everything, and it might be fibromyalgia or depression or pulmonary breathing things, all different things. When targeted the function of the vagus nerve, got that working better, and the symptoms have lifted. It's so interesting because the cranial nerve, cranial sacral therapy years ago, and they kept telling me I was a flat back, so I stopped going because I was like, this is really depressing. I was a flat back, that was the issue, but they just kept telling me that. But yeah, I've just been really by it, in terms of another approach of how to look at mental health, and important it is connecting the mind with the body. But I was wondering if you'd come across that and sort of sharing that with whoever's. But
I haven't actually, no, I haven't come across that or that book. But yeah, I've heard people talking about the vagus nerve. I think, you know, look, with all this stuff, it's important to take whatever resonates with you, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's so much out there, and I think you can get to a point of overwhelm when people are telling you that you need to do X, Y, and Z for your wellness, for your mental health. You need to make sure you're doing all these things, and it actually becomes detrimental to your well-being because you're trying to fit all this into your already quite busy life. So I think just actually reflecting on what resonates with you, like I said, just with meditation, I was trying for years, people telling me that, oh, meditation is really good, it will really stop your negative thinking patterns and it will ground you and blah blah blah, and I would try and I'd get more frustrated with myself, and I'd block it in my diary, you know, to do it, and then I just suddenly took the pressure off myself. I was like, hey, this doesn't work for me. Why am I trying to force this tool down my throat that doesn't work? So I stopped and started doing other bits and pieces, things that have actually resonated with me. So I think everyone can pick their own toolkit, right?
Oh, totally. That's why I'm so interested in asking people's wobble toolkits, because, you know, they are individual, and I think meditation, not particular, not quite the right word, but it's so person to person dependent.
Yeah.
And I get elements of, I always say to Dad, because Dad's like, my dad, you know, there's no way that he would be doing meditation, you know, not his task to take.
You tried it on him.
I haven't tried, because it's just different generation and just different, you know.
Yeah, I get it.
And he's always had amazingly level-headed, forward-thinking life, and he's, you know, that is within him. You know, for him, he goes and plays golf, and I was like, that is your meditation. That's the thing that takes away, that you know, cuts out all the chitter chatter in your mind, and that's your meditation. It doesn't have to be sat in a seated position with your eyes closed. Like, it's, you can look at, you can get benefits in different ways. And with negative thinking, I said to you earlier, I do remember it really, I wish I could remember the post, but it was something about framing.
Yeah.
I really take that. I honestly do applied it to particularly.
It's really good.
Because it's that very simple flipping something on its head changes the way you can look at something, and it is very easy to catastrophize. You know, when your moment of anxiety and the wall goes up in your mind, goes up. When you're not feeling anxious, everything feels so easy. But if your particular, it is, if you know me, if that wall comes up, it feels really hard to batter it down. And the way that you talked about reframing for me has really helped. And are there any other that you'd have around negative thinking? I know Dave Shetty talks about, what is it? Stop, something, stop, notice, swap, or something. There's another wire, you know, and you have, and there are some people that say if a negative comes in, stop it, you stop it. But they actually, if a negative thought comes in, allow it, don't react to it. What would you negative thinking?
I think actually all the post you're referring to that I wrote, if I remember rightly, around reframing was that what really worked for me in terms, I mean, reframing covers all sorts of different ways of of doing this, right? But for me, the thing that works, and I still use, in fact, I used it yesterday when I was trying to do some work, and I was kind of getting a bit stressed about it. I literally wrote at the top of my piece of paper, I don't have to do this, I get to do this. So literally changing the way you look at something, you know, for example, I mean, strange example, my daughter obviously has to change nappies, right? And sometimes it's not the most pleasant experience. But instead of saying, oh God, I've got to go and change another nappy, I just change the way I think about it. And of course, this doesn't work all the time, but I try to. I say, instead of I've got to go and change a nappy, I say, I get to go and change a nappy. This is an opportunity for me to actually spend time and connect with my daughter. And it completely, that little, rather than I have to do this, I get to do this, it turns it from a challenge to an opportunity. From something I don't want to do to something, actually, oh, this is actually quite cool. I'm happy to do this. You know, this is an opportunity. I get to have this experience. That little reframing tool really works for me. Again, it might work for other people, but it also might not.
Well, it definitely worked. It definitely worked for me. And I think it's refreshingly simple as well. Because there is so much information around negative thinking, you can sometimes become too much on hyper alert and become hyper vigilant to your thoughts, which can actually send you back inwards and kind of spiral, you know. I've definitely found that when I did something called the lightning process a couple of years ago, NLP, and I don't think it was CBT. It's interesting, works brilliantly for people. You know, I have friends who it's literally quite like a lightning effect, bam. What it does, your thoughts, and trying to stop them in their tracks, and then so I guess the notice, shift, rewire. So for me, it just went in my head as opposed to taking it out of my head. Whereas what I like about the reframing is it doesn't get complicated. You know, it goes
super simple.
Not a challenge, just look at it slightly different. I think it's the softer touch sometimes, because there is so much out there and you can feel overwhelmed when it comes to looking after yourself and well-being, mental health. So.
I think it's really important for people to recognize that when you feel stressed, when you feel anxious, as we all do on a daily basis, right? When we get that email that triggers us or whatever, your response is totally natural. It's actually, you need that stress response. Like it helps you. It's a good thing. The problem is when it becomes too much and you can't handle it. But it's actually your body trying to protect you. It's a positive reaction to help you survive in the world. Like when you're crossing a road and you see a car coming, you get a slight shot of adrenaline, so you're able to step back and not get hit by the car. So it's a good thing. It protects you. It helps you perform well. Like if you don't have any pressure or any stress in your life or no anxiety, you're not going to actually perform at your best. You need a bit of it. It's just you need to learn how to manage it so that it doesn't, you don't go into a crisis point and it becomes like a long-lasting form of anxiety.
Yeah, it's a balance, isn't it? And you're right to say, and thank you for bringing that up, because our bodies are so clever. Like, how cool are our bodies? They take care of us. They will, against all odds. That comes first and foremost. Like, will protect, and us knowing that and understanding that can also help. Just again, okay, that's fine. Reacting, I'm okay.
Yeah, I use this actually a lot in my work with companies. I talk about this concept of emotional awareness, which leads to emotional regulation. I mean, it sounds like a slightly corporate-y way of saying things, but it's, you know, if you understand what's actually going on, like if you're aware of that stress response in your body, you're much more likely to be able to manage it, because you can, as you said earlier, kind of take a perspective on things. Yeah, emotional awareness that leads to emotional regulation, without a doubt. The more I have learned to understand why I am the way I am, why I'm triggered by certain things, enables me to take a step back and go, oh yeah, there we go, I'm being triggered again. And I can then kick in that kind of rational part of my brain.
Yeah.
Which I, you know, because what is it? In fact, I heard a really good analogy for this. You know how we have this cognitive part of our brain at the front, right? And then we have this limbic system at the back. And, you know, most of the thinking is done in our limbic system. I think if you've ever read the book, Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, that's really good. Highly recommend that book on this whole difference in thinking. Anyway, I heard a good analogy the other day for the size of the amount of thinking that's done in each part of the brain. So if the amount of thinking in the front part of your brain is equivalent to a meter squared of space, yeah, the amount of thinking done by the immediate automated part of your brain at the back, those automated functions, would be the size of the Milky Way.
Yeah.
So yeah, so most of our day-to-day decisions, the things we're doing, are automated completely. The way we're responding to things is triggering, you know, someone hands you something, you put out your hand automatically. These are not, we're not in control of these things. These are just happening. We don't realize it. The things we actually think about is so limited. So you're you know, it's a David and Goliath kind of thing. You know, you need to somehow get power back to David, back to the cognitive part of your brain. And yeah, reframing, taking perspective on things, becoming aware of your emotions, so that you can actually understand what's going on and rationalize your response is hard, but it gives you some perspective on that challenge. Yeah,
and it's doable, you know. Brain's neuroplasticity, you know, that can occur like throughout the duration, and you can create new. Yes, habits stay. Fear, not necessarily for their fears, they're irrational fears, and your mind isn't that pathway is not going to disappear. Create new ones that are stronger and override that.
absolutely.
But yeah, I love that analogy, because I talk quite a lot about well, because of what yoga can do in terms of strengthening this versus that.
Yeah.
And yoga being the holistic practice more than the postures. But hearing that, I mean, that's just classic.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Milky Way, you're like, oh lordy. I mean, yeah, your chimp bananas in the background in the Milky Way, not surprising. Or rational brain has 1 meter to like.
Yeah, the chimp at the back of the brain's got a lot more space to run around.
Yeah, right. Oh, Charlie, well, I'm just noticing the time. I'm conscious of taking up your time and people's who've joined today, but thank you. I think we covered quite a lot in a short amount of time, and it's certainly something I've got a few people I'd really. So thank you for taking the time.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me, Emma.
See you. Love to your girls, and I can't wait to see you in person.
That would be lovely. Sure. Love to your boys, and yeah, we'll see you down at the coast soon, hopefully.
Amazing. Bye and bye.